What is going on, everyone? Tim from Tirfon Orbital. So today is going to be a little bit of a different demo video. We are not going to be talking about a lightsaber. We are going to be talking about one of the coolest and possibly one of the most criminally underrated blasters in the Star Wars universe, the A180 blaster. It is more well known as Jyn's blaster. This is the blaster that Jyn swipes from Cassian in Rogue One.
Why does she get a blaster and I don't?
What?
I know how to use it.
Where'd you get it?
I found it.
I find that answer vague and unconvincing.
And what better weapon to use if you are going to be stealing Death Star plans than the very, very versatile blaster tech A180. So I'm going to try my best to talk a little bit about the history behind this weapon, what the actual prop was built on, and we will also talk about the install that I did on this. I'm very, very proud of the hurdle that I tried to get past, that is installing this blaster. There's not a lot of space in this blaster, all right? Not a lot of space to work with, but one of the things that I really, really wanted to do was get a removable magazine chassis install for this thing. And while that is not something that we ever really see in any of the films or shows, like we don't see someone putting a magazine into this hilt, it's not film accurate. It is very cool, in my opinion. It is something that I had wanted to do for a while, right? So we will talk about the chassis that I put into this, and then we will talk about the install, how to use it, and all that good stuff, right? But first, let's talk about the actual prop, right? In universe, the A180 is like the Swiss Army knife of blasters. It can transform into a number of different weapons. It can transform from a simple pistol into a rifle. A sniper configuration is also available for this thing, and even a launcher. Basically, this is like the IKEA of blasters, right? One weapon for different possible builds, okay? Which I think is a very, very cool aspect of the A180. But behind the scenes, the actual prop was built on a Luger P08, okay? So if you take apart or take off this barrel and some of these greeblies on the side, it's essentially a Luger underneath it, right? I like seeing those extra parts that make it look like it was from another universe and not a 1940s era pistol, okay? So anyhow, with all of that out of the way, I know that was a very quick rundown on the actual prop. Let's come into Fusion and talk a little bit about the chassis that I designed for this, and then we will come up top, talk a little bit more about some of the modifications that I had to do to get this thing installed, right? So let's come into Fusion. All right, so here it is, right? This is the chassis system that I designed for this hilt. Removable magazine chassis. And right off the bat, there's not a lot of room to play with. One of the things that I knew that I wanted to do with this build back, I started this a couple of years ago, actually. This is only like the third or fourth one that I've done. One of the things that I really wanted to achieve with this is a couple of things, right? I wanted the magazine to be removable, obviously. I also wanted a decent sounding speaker in this build. Typically with tight builds like this, with a lot of blaster builds, we do see pancake speakers. But with this one, I wanted to get a more premium sounding speaker. Luckily for this chassis, a 22 millimeter speaker did fit in this one. So I use 22 millimeter nano elite speakers for this chassis from Smuggler's Outpost, okay? The chassis is designed in a clamshell fashion, right? So there are two pieces to the magazine that are held in place with some screws, some Phillips head screws. Yes, they're not in universe, sorry. But they are held in place with two Phillips head screws, all right? Proffieboard sits down here, okay? I do have a kill switch in this build. The speaker takes up a significant portion of this upper section, all right? And then I did design a PCB system that holds some pogo pins, right? And this is what makes a connection from the chassis itself when you slide that magazine into the hilt or into the blaster. That is what makes a connection to all of the other electronics on board the blaster itself. So your switches, your neopixels, things of that nature. For this particular install, I did set this up with a blade detect or a clip-in, clip-out sound, and that is done with another, like an extra pin. That pin is essentially grounded out to a switch, and that is what makes it triggers a sound essentially when you remove that magazine, right? But just not a hell of a lot of room to work with in here. And now you're probably thinking, like, where does the battery go? So I am actually using a very, very small 3.7 volt lipo battery in this. The cool thing about lipo batteries is that they are small. The compromise that you have to make is, because it's a small battery, runtime is not as long as, like not as long as you know, a lightsaber blade with an 18650 battery. Obviously the milliamp hours are smaller. However, there are not a lot of neopixels in this build either, right? So those neopixels are not drawing a lot of amps. They're not drawing a lot of power continuously. So it is kind of a payoff, right, with having a smaller battery, but that is just something to keep aware of, right, to you, the customer. One of the things that I really love and that saved this build is the upgraded Proffie V3. So when I did the first install or build on one of these, we were still using Proffie V2s, and you had to take apart the magazine to charge the battery and all of that. With this, with Proffie V3, there's onboard charging. It is a slow trickle charge, right? But you can charge this thing by plugging directly into the USB port on the Proffie board. It just takes a little bit longer, right? So, but anyhow, that is the chassis. One of the things that I'm like, now that I'm looking at it, one of the things that was the most difficult when prototyping this magazine was this catch here. If your spacing was not exactly precise to the magazine catch that's inside the blaster itself, the magazine would not stay in place. So this was very, very hard figuring out the placement on this, right? But that's it. That is the chassis for the A180 Jyn Erso blaster. Okay, let's come up top. All right, so here it is, the Jyn Erso A180 Blaster Tech pistol. Okay, very, very unique looking hilt. Hilt. I keep saying hilt. Very unique looking blaster. So something that I say time and time again is I love seeing like real world objects that are modified just slightly to make them look like they came from a different universe. Okay, we see this with Han's blaster. I really, really love seeing this, and this has the base of a Luger pistol. Now I actually happen to have a second one here that is in the middle of being built and installed, so I will talk a little bit about the parts, right? So the prop itself was also built, I believe, from an airsoft gun, right? And that is actually where I sourced these from. These are from Armorer Works. They are actual airsoft blasters or airsoft pistols. And I'm not familiar with the airsoft world, but I know what a Luger looks like. I've handled Lugers before, and these are very, very faithful replicas of the real world Luger P08 pistol, right? I think that they are fantastic replicas. They're all full metal, aluminum. They feel real. The action on the on all of these parts feels real. The magazine dropping out of the chamber feels real. I mean, everything is very, very accurate and very, very precise, right? And I think that it was a great choice of the prop department to choose to use these in the show and in the film, okay? So I have to make some modifications to mine, obviously. I have to change the barrel, essentially. So what I do with this build or these installs is I chop the barrel off because I want a barrel that is translucent. I actually got this idea from John over at Sabers Forever, okay? These barrels, I designed a barrel, all right, in Fusion and printed it off in clear resin. And what I do is I just slide my neopixel strip into this barrel, okay? So we get some easy diffusion. And at the tip of the barrel itself, I also have a single neopixel for animation at the tip, all right? I'm gonna go ahead and put this on the barrel so YouTube doesn't flag me. We've got to make sure that we make it very clear to the algorithm that these are not real firearms, okay? So anyhow, I modify the barrel to allow for space for neopixel strips. All right. One of the other things that I do is I wire up my switches a little bit differently. Okay, so I'm not sure if this is going to come out on camera, but there is a very small brass tactile switch behind this trigger. Now I've actually seen some on-set, not on-set, but I've actually seen pictures of the actual, like the prop that was used in the film. And it did almost look like there was a brass tactile switch behind the trigger, most likely to activate a simple LED or something that can be used on camera. But I put my switch behind this trigger. So this is the main switch. And then to switch modes, I have an aux switch that is mounted just below this safety mechanism, right? So I created a very simple 3D printed part that holds a very, very low profile tactile switch, and that is how you switch modes, okay? You can kind of feel it if you push this safety down, okay? There is a tactile switch there, okay? What else? All of the cocking mechanisms will work, all right? But there's no switch functionality to these up here, okay? But this will still move if you want to do that, all right? And that is it, okay? Again, I really just love the accuracy of these airsoft pistols. I just think that they're very, very well made. It does make installing a little bit of a challenge because of the space involved, right? But I do like the fact that it actually does feel like a real world pistol, okay? But let's talk about this chassis, all right? So to remove this chassis, you want to hit the slide release, which is right here, or the magazine release, rather, and the chassis will come out. So here is the chassis. This is cast in aluminum. All right, we've got a 22 millimeter speaker here. There's a kill switch along the side, and there is the Proffie board just down below here. So if you want to charge your Proffie, or you want to charge your battery rather, or upload a new config to your Proffie board, the USB port is right here. You can also slide that SD card out as well. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and hit this kill switch. We'll turn it on. Now, for the majority of the sound fonts that are on this, okay, I have loaded this with some, obviously, like some sound fonts from the films, all right? Some of these are lesser known blasters, all right? I did find an old Blaster Core sound font library online. You do have to change some of the file names and the naming convention of those older sound fonts, but I was able to modify some of those to make them usable on here. All right, so we do have that, and then obviously we've got Jyn Erso's A180 sound font on here as well. I also modified some of the clip in, clip out sounds that you hear when you put this clip in. So I did mention that I wired this up so that one of these pins is grounding out essentially, and that is what triggers a clip in, clip out sound. So when you put your magazine in, you're going to hear a clip in, clip out sound. Okay. And then you're ready to go. So this is empty, right? We're going to go over some of the switches, switch functionality as well, right? So that sound is that your blaster is empty. To reload, all right, you want to hold down this aux and release. Whoops. Hold down aux and release, and it will reload, okay? So this particular font does not have an aux mode. So some of them are set up with a stun mode or a blaster mode. This one is not. All right, so let's get to a font that has that. To scroll through your fonts, you want to long press and release of this aux button. So long press, release.
Okie religions and ancient weapons are no match for a good blaster at your side, kid.
Okay. So this is empty, right? To reload, long press, or hold it down, it will reload, okay? To switch modes, tap it once. Okay. See if we can get to empty again. I think there's 15 rounds. This config is set up for 15 rounds. And now it's empty again. To reload, just hold that down until you hear that audible cue and it's reloaded. Let's go to another font. Oops. So it's a long press and release.
I don't believe it. That's Clone Force 99.
Okay. All right. Let's go through a couple more. Got to reload here. Okay. We'll do one more. Oops.
All right, men, load your weapons.
Okay. So a couple of different choices on here.
Use one of those?
Yeah, pull the trigger.
More to it than that.
Okay, now it's empty. You got to reload. So hold down that aux. It'll reload. And you're good to go. All right. So that is it. Let's come down to the bottom. All right, here we are. We're back. Gotta love Sony and their wonderfully overheating DSLRs, right? So there it is. That is the A180 blaster. There is Jyn's sound font. Okay. Let's reload. Oh, I went to another font. Let's reload again. Okay, A280. That has a stun as well. Let's go to one more. DLT 19X. Oh, we got to reload. Now you can change. You can change the amount of rounds that are in your magazine, right, in the config if you want to increase that number. Right now it is at 15. Okay. Let's go to one more. Reload. Glee 44. Okay. And that's very cool having that clip out sound when you remove that magazine, right? So anyhow, that is it. That is the A180 installed with a removable proffieboard magazine. I really, really love this blaster. It's one of the most iconic blasters from the Star Wars universe, along with obviously the DL and the NN, which is Rey's blaster. Very, 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 very cool looking blaster. One of the things that I also very much enjoy as an installer is designing a way to get electronics into these things. Now, I've had a couple of requests, and literally it's only been 2 people, but now I really want to do it. I've had a couple of requests to do one of Sabine Wren's blasters, so might be doing one of those pretty soon. Again, like I really enjoy figuring out a way to get these usable and have them as a more of a functional prop rather than just a static prop, right? So, to you, the customer, thank you very, very much for your patience. This one took a little bit longer than we had anticipated. I was dealing with a little bit of shipment issues with these in U.S. Customs. But anyhow, now that this one is done, another slot has been opened on my website if anyone is interested. I do have another one coming right behind this for install that will be done this week as well. So, to you, customers who are waiting, thank you very much for your patience. And with that being said, thank you very much for watching, everyone. May the force be with you always. Have a good one, everybody.